Welcome, friends of the show. We are back with another episode of the Ferris Wheel Serious Rock Talk podcast.
Ooh, all right.
A big thanks for your emails, suggestions, and your support on our social media platforms. Continue to email us at seriousrocktalk@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Listen to a new show every week. Just tune in each Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. New York City time on Cap City Beats, located at www.capcitybeats.ca. Okay, buckle up for some serious rock talk. Welcome, everybody, to the worldwide premiere of the Ferris Wheel. Ladies and gentlemen, I am one of your hosts. My name is Ferris Kennedy, and my partner in crime,
Stephen Wheeler.
Wheels, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very well. And let's not forget our producer, Armando. Everyone say hello, Armando. Hello, Armando.
So what we want to introduce to you is the concept of the Ferris wheel. So I'm going to leave my partner in crime here to describe our philosophy.
Well, basically, the philosophy of the Ferris wheel is quite simple. It's not your Seinfeld philosophy, nor your Aristotle. There's no Plato involved either way. This is going to be our philosophy and what we think about it. The initial concept and the main concept will be debate and educate regarding music. And in the points of making history, we're going to discuss of what was made, what will be made, who we think is good, and who we think is not. And then Armando, well, who cares what Armando thinks, because he's just behind a glass door.
And making obscene gestures every once in a while when he doesn't agree with us.
Which is quite often, especially when I am speaking. He's always frowning. Wheels, what do you say?
I say we start right now with our first debate ever. And our first debate is something of a pet peeve of ours, is the definition of classic rock. Because that's something that's a word that just keeps being thrown out there, has lost all meaning to us. Like it's just become like this word that everybody uses all the time, and it doesn't reflect reality. So tonight we're going to bring back the real definition of classic rock.
That's correct. And for all you millennials that are listening out there, Spice Girls are not classic rock. I repeat, they are not classic rock. It is a totally different era. And my main man, Wheels, is going to give you a definition of what classic rock is. Wheels, what is classic rock?
So classic rock is basically what was known once as rock or popular music. So basically it's the music that appeared in the 50s, and it actually is something that came from other styles of music, blues, country, and western, of all things, for some reason, and even that bubblegum pop that your grandparents listened to. So that's where rock originates. Classic rock is basically the great ones. That's that great era from the late 50s all the way, we'd say, to the late 70s, early 80s, if you really, really, really want to push it.
Well, if you want to get really technical, the year I would have to say, Wheels, is 83 is where the cutoff goes for classic rock. And for what most people usually say that they would deny, very few people would deny that this genre has some of the best music ever, especially when you have legendary bands like the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, and Justin Bieber. Oh, sorry, no, I meant the Doors.
So yeah, basically our biggest pet peeve is the fact that most top 40 stations call classic rock anything that's older than 25. And since we're older than 25 ourselves, that doesn't make us classics. Classics to us, it just means good music.
Makes us legendary. When you're over that 25-year-old threshold, it makes you legendary. Things that your mom and dad would listen to. Grandparents, all depending what era they really came around to, especially certain grandparents had no idea what music was. But nowadays, anything that your parents would listen to, like my main man Wheels would say, late 50s, early 60s, and I'm giving you that cutoff from 1983. That's just where it's going to stop.
So there is something also that we want to put out there. Classic rock is something that's also meshed up, and it's mixed up with other types of rock, even from that era that we're talking about. So classic rock is not glam rock. Let's put it out there.
That's David Bowie, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you listening. Glam rock is David Bowie.
And it's not heavy metal.
Not at all.
And so Ozzy Osbourne and Metallica, although amazing musicians, not classic rock. And the other thing is air metal. It's not classic rock. Poison and Motley Crue are not classic rock. It's air metal. And that's a completely different debate as to if it's even metal, but that's something else. So there is something also, let's put it out there. There are bands past the 80s point that we put out there that do sound like classic rock. So something like the Black Crowes, they do sound like classic rock, but they're rock, basically.
Well, they fall into that category of modern rock, kind of borderline alternative. When you start getting into modern rock, this is where Bon Jovi comes in, U2, and anything around that era. You know, anything, like I said, after 83 Wheels, that's where the debate begins. A lot of people want to squeeze in that one last artist. I'm biased, so I'm going to squeeze in Bryan Adams. He is my favorite artist of all time. And technically speaking, he is classic rock. He was started off in 83, and that's when Reckless came out. So, correct me if I'm wrong, he's classic rock.
Well, you could be wrong, but this is our show, so you can never be wrong.
Oh,
man.
we're never wrong. We're never wrong.
We are the ultimate authority on these airwaves.
So where do you want to start off, Wheels? You want to? I see like you have your notes there, and it's basically just burning a hole in your booklet. And I think you're on the same page as I am, where major bands that are definitely considered classic rock. Is this where you want to go, Wheels? You want to read those first three for me?
Oh yeah. So to me, you said them originally, and they are the gods of classic rock. So let's put them out there. Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones.
And who's your favorite Led Zeppelin member?
I'm not sure, really. Like, it's such an amazing ensemble, and they all work, like, all their individual solo work sounds good. Never as good as Led Zeppelin. Like, Led Zeppelin was just, it's like the Beatles. You gotta love John Lennon, gotta love Paul McCartney, gotta love George Harrison.
Most underrated Beatle, if you ask me.
Exactly. But still, I mean, as a group, they made just most amazing music in the world. Imagine is a great tune. But can you say that it revolutionized the world as much as half the stuff he did with McCartney? Like, there is that special sauce that happens once in a blue moon with these amazing bands, and it's just like a collaborative effort. And afterwards, like some of these groups, the musicians will eventually have a great solo career, but will they ever really reach the heights that they achieved as a band? Like, there's just that special sauce.
Well, let's get back to that magical sauce that you're talking about here, and let's just dissect the Beatles just a tad. Beatles originated, obviously, like everyone knows, from England, and at the end of the day, the ones that you have there weren't really the original ones. The original drummer was actually Pete Best, and the rumor has it that they got rid of Pete Best because he was too good looking, and they had Stu Sutcliffe, who was the bassist, and he ended up wanting to do something a little bit different in his life. So, the good movie that people could refer to is Backbeat, which was the story of the Beatles. And if you talk to my father, he loves that story, and it is true. Ringo Starr's real name is Richard Starkey, and just Ringo Starr sounded really cool. But Ringo joined the band because he had a lot of money back then. He came from a very wealthy family. So this is where people tend to forget that, yeah, Pete Best was an original Beatle. Stu Sutcliffe was an original Beatle. Then you have John, Paul, and George. George is the most underrated Beatle. And their producer, I believe George Martin, said that they were horrible when they sang. They were totally out of key, totally out of tune, and they were a little choppy. But at the end of the day, they started a revolution that, you could consider them part of the British invasion.
Oh yeah, no, they are the original invaders, if we can call them that. Like it's a charm offensive. When they came to New York, that's when it had just exploded. Like there were a few British musicians that had crossed the pond, but never anything like the Beatles. And to a certain degree, Canada has a little role in that because the Beatle albums came in Canada before they went to the States. Because Canada back then was a very, let's not say British society, but they were British influence.
Monarchy.
Yeah, exactly. The monarchy here was really big. So, I mean, Canada did play a little bit, like their reputation was already really good in Canada. Some of the music filtered down to the States, but I mean, there was a big push by their record company to send them down to the States, and it just exploded on their own merits. But, like you said, originally these guys were nothing much to sing about. Like these guys were basically just your average musician, but something took in the sauce, and they had a great producer, they had a great manager, and it created something legendary. And that's what classic rock is. It's legends. Little legends, big legends, but legends.
And there's more legends that we're going to discuss. I'm going to go down the list here, Wheels. I'll read the next three. The Doors. Obviously, everyone knows Jim Morrison, and they released quite a few albums in their, in Jim Morrison's lifespan of, 27 years?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty successful what you did, and there's a lot of spin-off cover bands that came out. I want to give a shout-out to a friend of mine named Ian Card, who was part of the Doors, spelt with a Z. And back in the day, Ian had a nice flock of hair where the tips would shine quite nice and glisten with the sweat off the piano in the bright lights because it was, in his words, hot. That's what he had told me. It was hot. So we got the Doors. Jimi Hendrix, unfortunately, this is another gentleman that kind of just, did not last as long as he should have. Don't do drugs, kids. This is what happens, okay? This is the unfortunate part. And The Who, well, it's The Who. And they're legendary in their own way because they've released numerous amount of albums which have, by definition, fallen into the classic rock definition.
So basically what we've put out there are the giants. Then you have other names that are really big, but maybe not as legendary. Like you have Aerosmith, you got the Allman Brothers, you got Janis Joplin, you got Clapton, you got CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival, for those of you who are not.
And now it's Creedence Clearwater Revisited because it
that's
was
true, yeah.
but Wheels, it's kind of funny that you jumped to Aerosmith. You missed out Pink Floyd, the Eagles with Don Henley, Glenn Frey, but Rush.
Yeah, I don't know why there.
That's Wheels' favorite band, ladies and gentlemen. He loves the three guys from Burlington. That's his band. Can you not be in the limelight, Wheels? Are you friends with Tom Sawyer?
See, the thing is, I have to tell you, is that my gentleman friend here by the name of Kennedy knows that this can be the worst punishment for me to put on some Rush. So that's what he's going to do. Like every time I do something to get on his nerves, he's going to bring up Rush. So be ready for Rush references up the wazoo.
How's Geddy Lee doing these days?
I have no idea, and I don't really care.
Well, that's the answer I was looking for. But I'll tell him you said hello. Go on and continue that list. So you left,
So the reason why I left out Pink Floyd was basically, it's classic rock, yes, but it's a subgenre. So if we go with Pink Floyd, we have to mention other groups like Deep Purple, or also Yes, and all these amazing groups from the 70s that are, yes, they're classic rock, but they're also prog rock, and that will be a completely separate show that we can do in the future. But we wanted to really give you like the big names that are going to go through the course of our show, not only in the coming episodes, but probably down the line in years and years to come, because we intend to be here for the long haul.
I'm here to basically annoy Wheels for a very, very long time. And I'm going to continue on this list. Deep Purple, in French, are they known as Mauve Profond? Is that how you would say it?
Oh, that's how you would say it. That's not an accepted name because it sounds really, really dirty.
But you forgot Queen, my friend.
Oh, no, I didn't forget Queen because, of course, you would remember Queen.
Oh, who wouldn't remember Queen? If
Exactly.
it wasn't for Freddie, there would be no Queen. After Freddie, Queen should have just said bye-bye and stayed home.
And that's also going to be one of our future shows.
That's going to be a rant show.
Oh, yeah.
You have this very angry show. Angry show. Continue, Wheels.
Okay, so we can mention other names also like Peter Frampton, Love, Santana, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Steppenwolf, Lynyrd Skynyrd, and many others. But the other thing that you have to know about classic rock is that category does tend to go in a lot of different directions.
Well, it's an overlapping eras that they want to refer to as.
Exactly, yeah. So there are names out there that are considered classic rock, but also, like, let's take an example. Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan, to anybody who lived through the 60s and remembers it, although it's been said that if you remember the 60s, you weren't really there, they will, of course, mention Bob Dylan as one of the biggest influences, if
He's
not
folk.
the biggest.
I find he's more folk. He started becoming classic rock when he decided to go electric with the Paul Butterfield band.
Exactly.
And at a festival that I was not part of, unfortunately. And Wheels, I don't know if you were.
I do have white hair, but not that much.
No. But this is where it started becoming. As soon as you start adding electric to acoustic, for some odd reason, everyone thinks it becomes rock or heavy metal. But that's not the case, boys and girls. It's just darn good music.
Exactly. And we have to say, Bob Dylan in the 70s, it did become rock. But to us, the real Bob Dylan, the one that's in our art, is the folk artist. Even if you went electric, it's still folk. Folks. So the other names that we can put in this overlapping bizarre era that is the 70s and early 80s, and that where it really becomes more blurred out there, is we can talk about people like Fleetwood Mac, The Police, Steely Dan, Journey.
With Steve Perry, not the Arnel Pineda. I don't like that at all. Again, another show, people, when you start replacing singers, that's annoying. Okay? I don't care if you had a falling out with them. It's annoying. Because after that, you tend to suck. That's my opinion. Wheels, you might agree with me or disagree with me.
Well, it depends on the band, but yeah, no, it's going to be a huge rant show. Like, we have to talk about this.
Well, Armando's giving me the thumbs up for that one, so he's agreed with
Exactly.
me. So if Armando agrees with me, I'm right.
So the other big names that we have to mention, of course, are Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Young. Because these guys, I mean, they do start out slightly folkish, but let's face it, classic rock in the 70s wouldn't be rock without people like Neil Young. And he's still going through the motion, and he's still making some pretty decent music to this day. But we owe a lot to him and people like him for what we consider classic rock. And so now we get into this area that's really, it's tempting to call it classic rock, but it's wrong. So I threw a name out there to you, Nirvana.
No, that's alternative. That's legendary. You got Kurt Cobain, David Grohl, who then went on to be Foo Fighters, and yeah, there's history in its own. That will be another show. But Nirvana is not classic rock. Nirvana is definitely alternative rock. Alice in Chains will fall into that alternative rock. And I'm gonna go out there and say that Neil Young was the one that started alternative.
Yes, I do agree. And to a great level, he's the one who went from folk to rock to these bizarre experimental.
And those are some pretty deep Canadian roots. Deeper than Rush, I think, Neil Young.
Yes.
Wheels, do you agree?
I completely agree.
So if you had a chance to sit down and talk to either Neil Young or Geddy Lee, who do you want to talk to?
Oh, Neil Young, because I'm going to talk about cars, I'm going to talk about trains, I'm going to talk about everything with him, and it's going to be always interesting, although I'm pretty sure the air will be filled with a certain smell of pot, but
Not necessarily. I think he's way past that age. His hair, though, I have a good barber for him. He could go see my barber. He'll work wonders. Getty, on the other hand, well, give him credit. He still has a full head of hair. Glasses, a little creepy. I think we're done with the sunglasses era, dude. And that's about it. Go on, Wheels.
so I'm going to throw other names at you. Pearl Jam.
Alternative. Eddie Vedder has a distinct voice. He is by far probably one of the kings of alternative. I love alternative music, I'll be honest. Growing up in the 90s, Eddie was there for me. I think Pearl Jam's best album by far has to be 10. 10 is their best album. Or the one Versus, which my childhood friend Mark would always call it, which has no idea what means, but for those of you that know, or I'll give you the definition, is because I think it's a sheep on the album.
It is.
So the sheep is like chewing the fence. And Mark's term of describing what Versus was so when I refer to Pearl Jam, it means Versus with the sheep.
Exactly. Guns N' Roses.
Love them. One of my favorite bands of all time. They're hard rock. They kind of fall into that. I don't want to consider them borderline heavy metal, but not like Iron Maiden type of heavy metal. If it wasn't for me personally, obviously you do need Axl Rose and you do need Slash. You do need Duff McKagan. But seeing them in concert, if there was no Slash and no Axl, it couldn't have gone. Now Duff has done some solo stuff on his own. It turned out okay. He's actually working on another super group. The name does not go with me, but the guitarist, correct me if I'm wrong, it's Mark McCready from Pearl Jam. Mark McCready, Duff McKagan, and some other guy, which slips my mind. But we'll get to super group. The super groups will be another episode. But for me, if there's no Slash in Guns N' Roses, I know Axl's got that distinct voice, and it's great, and he performed well. He's done this. The last tour was fantastic. But if you don't have Slash, then to me, the band is done. So, to get back to your question, they're not classic rock. I'd love to consider them classic rock. But no, they're I fall into the hard rock category for sure.
And a final one that's more contemporary, U2.
That's modern rock. A lot of people want U2 to kind of give up. It's funny, actually, I heard something this morning on Lithium. So for those who have satellite radio, Lithium, with Matt Pinfield, they were talking about Achtung Baby. And believe it or not, that album there, they had an argument over Mysterious Ways. And that almost separated the band. So a lot of people out there probably smiling and saying, darn, why didn't that happen? That we could be rid of U2. But no, it didn't happen. But they were going through some times. And they were hating each other, which is fine, because I don't like some people sometimes.
No, exactly.
Especially when you start playing Rush in my car. I don't know why you do that to me. You really annoy me.
I mean, it could be considered a violation of your human rights. Torture is illegal. So because unfortunately time is slipping through our fingers, and there are these big names that you often hear associated with classic rock. These classic names of people that have either gone a long time ago or are still there, but let's put it out there. The Beach Boys, Bob Marley, The Clash, James Brown, and Stevie Wonder.
Okay. Beach Boys, not classic rock. That's surf music. Bob Marley, everyone knows that's reggae. Okay. The Clash, I actually consider them punk. So punk, you have your Clash, Sex Pistols, Ministry. That's another show. I'll definitely have to do a lot of research on that one because that's just a part of music which I thought was, at the time, devil music, but it's not. It's actually pretty good. James Brown is soul. Everyone knows that. Stevie Wonder, I consider him more R&B. Not hip-hop, just rhythm and blues, the original rhythm and blues, soul music, Motown. That's what I refer him to as.
So we're going to end this show slowly but surely with this little nugget of knowledge for people out there. What we're saying is basically classic rock is this source of long debates that we've heard over and over again. We're not saying what we're saying is the end all and be all. We're just saying this is our definition of classic rock. And this is what we're going to use as a guideline in our upcoming episodes. Like we promised, Like, you heard us during this 25-minute rant of ours saying what we think, and we've also told you that we're going to have these amazing episodes coming up. So I'm going to let my partner in crime here give you a few of our little nuggets of ideas of shows that are coming up.
Shows that we've actually outlined, and this is not something that just came up overnight. This has been, I think, about a couple of years in the work where, you sit down and you have conversations over some nice beverages and a good cigar, and you talk and reminisce. So I'm going to bring up ideas of shows that we definitely will put into. So we're definitely going to talk about Gone Too Soon. So artists that have unfortunately left this world way too soon before their time, whether it was through their own, misfortune that they caused it themselves, or just, God decided that it was time for them to go. We're also going to talk about the alternative movement. That was probably one of the greatest revolutionary changes of music when grunge started coming in. So this is where you start getting your Nirvana and your Pearl Jam and all the good stuff, Alice in Chains. We're going to talk about actually Lane Staley, Alice in Chains, and then we'll bring in William Duval later. Regarding also other shows of when you replace your lead singer, how stupid that could be sometimes. And, just ask Journey how many followers they have left, because I'm not one anymore. Not anymore. After Steve Perry's done, that was it. It was over for me. Queen, perfect example that I don't think they want to give up. And you can never replace a legendary icon like Freddie Mercury. You just can't do that. And all the other shows that we're going to go to, we're probably going to get into some heavy metal. We're definitely going to go back a little bit into the pop era where we have Pat Boone. That's where maybe the godfather of pop started off, and we'll definitely talk about the king of pop, Michael Jackson. And we have many more. We're definitely going to promote our email address on the next episode and give you guys access to send us ideas of what you'd like us to talk about and what kind of research you want us to go for. And we'd be more than happy to take your suggestions. And please, also any feedback you want to give us regarding the show and what kind of content you thought we missed out, or correct us on a few things, because unfortunately we're not perfect. We got Armando here always harping on us, saying that you got to be a little bit more clear and you got to be more concise with your knowledge. What does Armando know? He's just behind a glass wall.
Exactly. So on that little pearl of wisdom, this is Stephen Wheeler.
And I'm Ferris Kennedy.
And there's Armando behind a glass saying, see you next time.
Have a good night.
On the Ferris wheel.
Don't forget the Ferris wheel.